Uh, Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeremy Baxter. This is my final project for DBA610 financial decision making. This is the financial strategies and impacts presentation. The professor for this class is Dr. Christina Gierke. And real quick, I just want to say thank you so much. I was having some technical difficulties yesterday, so thank you for allowing me another day. And so what are we going to talk about today? In this really short presentation, kind of the big picture is that Nike will have a limited partnership with David Beckham Ventures to buy the football club Manchester United. And the spin on this is, so this will further women's professional sports, and really though it's to make a lot of money. And so we're going to talk about where women's sports are at, what's going on with those numbers, who's Nike, who's Beckham, what's Manchester United, the angle that we're going for, and some history with Nike, and maybe some missed opportunities that they've had. And then what are some risks that are involved in the conclusion. And so looking at women's sports, girls sports, they've, with except, you see a little bit of a slide there because of COVID, but for the last over 40 years, women's sports has been on the rise, as has men's, as has men and boys. But there's in every sport, there's equipment and there's gear, and Nike produces a lot of this gear. And getting out front and being the champion for women's sports would really make Nike a lot of money here. So let's talk about a missed opportunity that Nike had. In 1992, the United States men's basketball team, now we refer to it as the Dream Team, was a huge missed opportunity for Nike. So Nike had the opportunity to sponsor this team as a whole, but they didn't. They'd never done that before. They sponsor individual players, but never an entire team. Well, this particular team, instead of going through Team USA and the other avenues that the Olympics usually goes through, this time they picked the best NBA players born in the United States alive, and absolutely demolished all the competition and all the hype and all the media that was behind this. Nike immediately realized that they made a mistake, and we know they did because they paid Michael Jordan a lot of money to drape the American flag in such a way that it would hide the Reebok logo on his jacket, which he did, right? So since then, Nike has sponsored several Olympic teams, and Nike has partnered to a lesser extent with LeBron James for an English football team, but have never been out front as the main sponsor. They haven't owned a team, not yet. So let's think about financial decision making. What are we doing here? So in addition to the immense amount of numbers and the immense amount of trends and records and getting into the reports and all this sort of stuff, and honestly, this project, if it has taught me anything, it's taught me that for any venture, it would take months and months to just get behind all the data to be able to make a really intelligent argument. But when you know the market, then you also kind of learn the loopholes, right? So in sports, a loophole that was exploited for years, specifically by the New York Yankees, was that there was no salary cap for professional players. Now there is now, but there wasn't before. So before the cap, you have all these extremely rich people, very wealthy people, who really want their team to win, and they're willing to pay whatever to have the best players in the world on that team. As of right now, there is no salary cap for women's professional sports. Any professional sports, much less football. We're going to focus on football. So, can Nike do this? Is Nike in a financial position to be able to buy a team if they wanted to? The short answer is yes. So much yes. After kind of getting into their annual report for a while, I was able to pull out some numbers, and last year they netted nearly $50 billion. And obviously, that's an increase. They slid a little bit during COVID. I think everybody did, but they're doing really well now. So without a doubt, Nike, if they wanted to, could buy. They could spend a lot of money. So let's talk about Beckham. Why would Nike even partner with this guy? So David Beckham is an American businessman who was born in the UK, right? Recently, Beckham partnered with several people in Miami, and he bought the Miami football Major League Soccer team out of Miami, right? He also bought not Premier League, but a professional soccer team in the UK, but not the Premier League, which is where Manchester United plays. So where did Beckham start? Beckham started at Manchester United. He was he is likely their most famous player of all time. You can't see it because of the little camera icon there, but it says Red Legends, and that's what they call him. They call Beckham the Red Legend because of his time at Manchester United. So Beckham, because he owns several football teams already, right, and his history with the team, his company would be a great management team for Nike to partner with to run Manchester United. And what is Manchester United? Manchester United is one of the oldest and most prestigious professional football teams in the world. When I say football, in America we call it soccer, but football in the UK. They've been around for a very, very long time, and less than 10 years ago they started in the UK. They started a professional women's league, and Manchester United was right on that. They started the first year, and they have professional women's players, right? And actually, wins and losses this year, Man U's women's team is doing much better than their men's team. But that's neither here nor there. So what are some of the risks and assumptions for Nike? So if Nike goes all in and they partner with Beckham and buy a team, then they, like many of my classmates have pointed out, they would be giving up their neutrality. This is a huge risk. There's a lot of other teams out there and a lot of other fans, and backing up just one team could make it so that they lose a fan base or several. I think the likelihood of that is relatively small. They would lose the diehard fans, but they would gain so many other fans, especially if they go the angle of promoting women's sports, because that would there's nobody doing that right now. But up until now, they've never backed or bought a team. They've cherry-picked the best players from all different sports and backed those particular players. Now, another risk is Manchester United's asking price. And right now, Manchester United is for sale. As of whenever I started this recording a few minutes ago, Manchester United's ownership team, which is also American based, released in a press conference a couple of weeks ago that in their long-term goals they were not opposed to selling the team outright, which means they're open for sale. And the price that they listed was just shy of $8 billion, which would be the highest price for any sports team in the history of sports ever. Chelsea recently sold for, which is their biggest rival, for $2.3 billion, and so they're, of course, they're going to go way higher than that, over twice what Chelsea sold for. So would Nike want to A, do this, B, for the most expensive that it's ever been and ever going to be? And another huge risk, and I don't think this can be overlooked, if everything happens, if Beckham's on board and he's ready to do this, and Nike's on board and they're ready to do this, and they spend the money on the marketing and they spend the money on the salaries, and they create a dream team of female soccer players and just buy everybody, all the best and brightest from all around the world, and put them in one spot. What happens if they still don't produce? At the end of the day, this only works if, and the Yankees found this out a couple of times really hard, that sometimes you can just buy the best players in the world and they just don't work well together. So a huge risk is we spend all this money, we partner, we buy, and it's a huge failure. The reward, on the other hand, is if they are the champions, they do create this really salary war, which is what inevitably happens in sports until they do put a salary cap on, is if they create this salary war and all these players are paid all this money to play on the teams, then which is what they're trying for. That's the best end, but the worst end, they just don't produce. So what's the conclusion? Well, I mean, this is just not going to happen, right? In reality, this is not going to happen. Beckham is already owns 2 teams. He's got a lot on his plate right now. He's not looking for anything else. Nike is happy to pick the best and the brightest from every team and sponsor all those teams and not take the risk of sponsoring any one particular team. So that, in reality, this is just not going to happen. For our project, I don't think that Nike would be willing to take the plunge to do this, but I think some smaller, in the process of doing this paper, I think probably some of the smaller Under Armour, Adidas maybe, would actually be willing to be the first ones. They seem more lined up in that. And I think pretty soon, if you're in the mind for it and you're watching women's professional sports, this is actually happening right now. This is recently there was a $25 million increase to women's professional hockey as a whole through their union agreement. It's $25 million, and that's huge. And so it's happened. We're seeing it happen. The salaries are coming up. The players are getting better. It's not just amateur league anymore, and people are having other jobs. It's actually professional leagues, and people are very competitive. And so somebody is going to end up taking the leap and taking that advantage in the loophole, and in creating creating the situation with salary cap, or exploiting the non-salary cap. And so that's all I have for this presentation, and the next couple slides are just references. I'll go through those real quick. I wanted to say that I really learned a lot more than I learned a lot in this particular project, mostly in just how vast merging a company, or even partnering with a company, acquiring another company, is just I've never personally done it in outside of lab settings in school, and like the more and more and more and more you get into the weeds, and the more it's just like there's no way to just compact all this information into 12 minutes. So there's a vast amount of knowledge out there. I learned an incredible amount in decision making, business decision making in general, the background, and not just the marketing side, which is mostly what I've concentrated on, but the hard numbers. I enjoyed that, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.